My name is Mike. I work here at the library, and this is part one of 3 parts, a video about roasting coffee beans, preparing coffee beans, storing coffee beans, and brewing coffee beans. But anyway, this is the first one. Next Thursday we'll have another one to talk about how to grind the beans and how to brew them in a French press. And then the following Thursday on Facebook Live, we'll have another staffer here, Cameron, to discuss another method of brewing beer. Coffee. I used to brew beer too. And that's called the pour-over method. So stay tuned. But today I'm going to show you how to roast coffee beans. Coffee lovers, I know you are always looking for the best tasting coffee in the world. But how do you do that? Well, I've got the answer for you. You roast your own coffee beans. Now don't get upset. It's a very simple thing to do. I've been doing it for 20 years. So, in fact, once you get into this, you'll be fascinated with it because there's so many things you could look at in coffee beans. But like I said, I've been doing it for 20 years. If I can do it, you can do it. But before we get to talking about actually roasting beans, I need to talk to you about coffee beans. Now over here, we have unroasted coffee beans. Of course, that's what you need to roast coffee beans, right? Now you can see the difference. I roasted these coffee beans about 5 days ago. Now you notice, of course, the difference in color. You've got the green beans, that's what they call them green beans. And then you have the roasted beans. Now, not only is there a difference in color, but if you look closely, there is a difference in size. You'll see that the green beans, the unroasted beans, are a lot smaller than the roasted beans. Now why is that? Well, during the roasting process, what happens is not only do the beans change color, and not only do the sugars caramelize, but what happens is that the moisture in the unroasted beans, the green beans, superheats and then expands the beans. And in fact, you'll hear, almost sounds like popping corn. You'll hear popping and cracking. In fact, people who do a lot of coffee roasting, they call that the first and second crack. And that gives you an indication how far along you are in the roasting process. Now, where do you get the beans? There are many stores online. I've been using one store particularly for 20 years, but there are a whole host of stores out there. And what's fascinating about all this, if you do start doing your own roasting, is that you can buy beans from different countries, or you can buy it by price or some type of combination. Over these 20 years of roasting coffee beans, I have bought beans from Sumatra, India, Yemen, Ethiopia, Kenya, Brazil, and all the different countries in Central America. In fact, those are the beans I'm buying, those are the countries I'm buying from now. These beans, I think that you can see here, I think are from Guatemala, but it's usually $5 a pound, so I buy 10 pounds. It's about $50 plus shipping. And the nice thing about green beans is that they last a long time, so you don't have to worry about them rotting or going bad. So anyway, now the different methods of roasting coffee beans. Back in the old days, they used cast iron skillets. Now, I have never used a cast iron skillet to do this, but essentially, as I understand it, you get the skillet really hot, put the unroasted beans in there, keep stirring, and voila, you have got your roasted coffee beans. Now, when I first started out roasting coffee beans, I used this type of device. It's just a regular old stovetop corn pot. And you can get different types. This one has a stainless steel bottom and aluminum bottom. You can get some that are just all aluminum. But this is what I started out with. As I got further into roasting coffee, I graduated to something like this. Now this is basically a hot air roaster. This is actually a corn popper. Now I've had three hot air roasters in my lifetime, and they don't last forever. They last maybe 3 years. My last one went kaput about 3 months ago, and I sat down and I thought, do I want to spend another $150 for a hot air coffee roaster? I thought, no, I don't want to do that. So what I did, I went back to the old tried and true stovetop roaster. And it's a very simple thing. It's a lot cheaper than something like this, and it'll last forever. Now, one of the things that the hot air type roaster does is that you have more control over the roasting process. You have temperature controls, and it has another nice feature too. It has a cooling function, which is something that is essential to roasting. Immediately after roasting your beans, you have to cool them quickly, otherwise they'll keep roasting. But anyway, so this is the device, or this is the roaster I use now, and it works great. Now, one of the things you'll discover when you roast your own beans, it creates a lot of smoke. Great smelling smoke. My wife could tell you all about it. It makes the house smell fantastic for at least a day. Now, if you don't like the smell of coffee, then you'll have to stay out of the house. But anyway, most people like the smell of coffee. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a cup of these green beans in the roaster. Make sure that the temperature is about 400 degrees, and it is about 400 degrees. So we're going to put the beans in there and start roasting. And what will happen gradually is that the green beans will turn a light brown, and then a darker brown, and then you'll start hearing the popping or the cracking. And you'll see a lot of smoke after that, because what's happening is that, like I said before, the moisture in the beans is coming out of the beans. More power. Do my Tim Allen imitation.
Hey Mike, Lynn Key says, we love the aroma they create.
I do need to warn you, if you do this in the house, like I said, it will create a lot of smoke, and if you have smoke detectors in your house, which everyone does nowadays, it will most likely set those off. But that's just a temporary thing. If you have dogs or cats, it's always fun to watch their reaction to the smoke detectors going off. So sometimes, what some people do, they will do the roasting outside on something like this or a camp stove. In fact, when I first started out, we lived in Florida, and I roasted all my beans outside because the weather was always nice out there, so I didn't have to worry about the smoke alarm going off. I think the temperatures out here are cooler, so that's slowing down the process here. Now this is really exciting stuff, watching those beans going around and around. I know you people are just hypnotized by it all. But I can smell it now. I can see a little bit of smoke coming out, but once this gets going, it'll just be a cloud of smoke coming out of this thing.
So Mike, generally, how long does it take to roast?
Well, in the house, when the temperature is fairly warm, it'll take me about 5 minutes. But it all depends on what kind of roast you want. If you want a dark roast, it'll take longer.
Right.
If you want a light roast, it won't take as long.
Right.
Do we have any questions there? No questions about? Does anyone else out there roast their own coffee beans? Maybe you could say something there. Leave a comment. I've made a lot of mistakes over the years. One of the things you don't want to do is burn your coffee beans because it doesn't taste very good. It's almost like they're carbonized or something like that. And I have done that before. But what happens is when they get too well done, the beans themselves just start to fall apart, and it's like drinking charcoal or something like that. It's not a good taste. There, I can start to see some smoke there. Now your darker roast that you use for espresso, stuff like that, that's what's called a Vienna roast, and that is very dark. There you can start to see some of the smoke. Great smell here. Great smell.
Yeah, I see it.
Now you people are very lucky. Not only do you get to watch these fascinating coffee beans starting to roast and smoke, but you're also here in the garage at Scott County Library. And this is a privilege that not everyone is entitled to. So just consider yourself blessed being in the garage here at Scott County Library. The reason being, of course, that we're out here is because we didn't want to do this inside the library with all the smoke detectors, and we didn't want the fire department to show up and ruin our video. So actually, that might have made it better. I don't know. Okay, so the beans are starting to get brown. I'm sure you can see the smoke here, and in just a little bit, you should be able to hear the cracking, the popping of these beans. Now I've had to increase the temperature more than I normally do because it's a little bit cooler out here in the garage, and you'll discover if you get into roasting coffee beans, the ambient temperature will affect the timing of your roast. As I said before, when I roast inside, it usually takes probably 5 minutes to roast my beans. If I go outside, it takes longer, and we basically are outside. Now you can see more smoke.
So Mike, what is your typical temperature that you roast?
I like 400 degrees. That's a nice balance. If it's too hot, your beans will burn up. If it's not hot enough, it'll take forever to roast. In fact, I'm not even sure if you would call that roasting. Now you can hear the cracking.
Yep.
And that's the first crack. There, many times, some people go for a second crack, and usually if your beans are going through the second crack, that means they're probably starting to get carbonized. That's really dark when you hear it cracking again. Can you hear that? There you go. Sounds like popcorn. Essentially, that's the same thing that's happening in popcorn. When you're popping corn, you have the moisture you have the water being superheated, and the kernels explode. Well, it's the same thing here with the coffee beans. Oh, this is smelling great. More smoke. And we looked for smoke detectors in here in the garage, and we couldn't find any, so we think we're pretty safe. Now, one of the downsides of using something like this as opposed to the hot air roaster, it's hard to see what the roast is because there's so much smoke. If you have a hot air roaster, it's much more easier to see the roast as it proceeds. So you sort of have to guess because it's hard to see through the smoke. Looks like they're light brown right now. Some are light brown, some are a little bit darker. And I've used strong flashlights and everything to try to pierce that smoke.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
It just doesn't work. But it's a great smell.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Still cracking. Moisture is being driven out, it's being superheated. The sugars are caramelizing. Now, like I said, if you get them too dark, you roast it too long, the sugars are no longer caramelized; they're almost burned off. So, like I said, it's really a fascinating thing, and this is the best coffee you'll ever have. And you want to do this in small batches. You don't want to do a big batch because if you do big batches, you'll have a lot of coffee storing around and it'll go bad after a while. Okay, I think that's...
Yeah.
Now, the next stage of this is to cool the coffee beans. Yeah. So, it's a very simple method, and all you do is put the coffee beans in a colander and get a spoon, preferably a slotted spoon, and just do this and cool these down. And it's important to cool them down as soon as possible, like I said, because if you don't cool them down, they'll keep roasting. Now, as I mentioned, with that hot air roaster, the $150 deal, those are nice in that they have a cooling function. So after the beans are roasted, you hit a button, and inside the roaster, it starts cooling. They have a fan at the bottom that cools it for you, so you don't have to do this. But like I said, I didn't have $150 to spend on another coffee roaster that would be kaput in 3 years. So this is an old standby. Now you'll notice there's a lot of black stuff there underneath the colander. That is chaff. So during the roasting process, the skin, the outer skin of the coffee bean sloughs off, it's burned off. And so it's a good idea to get rid of the chaff off your bean, otherwise you're grinding not only the coffee bean but the chaff. And who wants chaff? Now, this usually takes you about 5 minutes, and I'm not going to put you through that. So let's just assume that these cool down to where I normally cool them down to. And I'm going to show you, excuse me, I'm going to show you what I do next. You have to store your coffee beans, okay? So I have something like this. And this is an airtight coffee container that I bought at a local store. It has a seal, it has a gasket. Now you don't need an airtight container. And I'll tell you why. Because one of the virtues of roasting your own coffee beans is that you roast them in small batches, which one of the benefits of that is that your coffee beans are fresh. And so when you run low, you just make another batch. So you really don't have to worry about air getting into your beans and oxidizing them and creating off flavors. But if you want to use an airtight container, that's fine. I've used one all my life. But what I will tell you, if you do put them in an airtight container, after the first 12 hours after the roasting, you don't want to close it airtight. Why? Because the first 12 hours after roasting coffee beans, these beans are giving off carbon dioxide gas. And you want to let that go. They call it degassing. You want to let that out. It'll be out in 12 hours if you let it. And the way I understand it is that if you don't let the gas out, you don't let the carbon dioxide out, it'll create off flavors in your beans. So just keep it open a crack like that for 12 hours, and then the next morning when you grind your beans and brew your coffee, it'll be absolutely perfect. So that's about it. Make sure that you tune in next Thursday, Facebook Live, 3 o'clock. It'll be the second part of this 3-part video series. And next Thursday, I'll be discussing grinding your coffee beans and brewing your coffee using the French press method. The following Thursday, it will be Cameron, who works here at the library, discussing the pour-over method. And that's what he does. So that's it, folks, and take care.